Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program 2, where I think this is it. I think this is the design that will probably get us to where we want to be. So that is absolutely excellent. I'm just thinking about maybe moving these over ever so slightly, grabbing it like this, and then centering this a little bit by moving this out to be about like... can we go a little further, please? Yeah, about right here or so. Maybe even a little bit further over to be about, like, there. Okay, something kind of like that, just to make it a little bit more even. Sure, that seems reasonably fine, and we just need to run a quick test here. Now, I have set up an action group here, and we're just going to need to put this out on the pad. It doesn't actually matter if we put it on the runway or not. We're just going to hit this launch button. And the moment we get zoned in here, we're just going to pause the simulation and we're going to move this straight on over. Excellent. So we're going to pause the simulation. There we go. Right now, before anything happens here. And we're just going to place this over in Eve orbit here. So we are going to select Eve. We're going to teleport that right on over. And let's run this re-entry test. This one, I think, should be it. Why are we already showing plasma? KSP2 is a very finished game. Okay, so we're going to play now. There we go. No plasma. And check out this action group. Boom. Note how it's deploying the air brakes as well as every single heat shield. And that is just absolutely phenomenal. The game is frozen for a moment, but there we go. Cool. Wonderful. So I think that this will do the trick. I'm like 99% certain that this will get us through the heat shield exploding stage. And that would be magnificent. Now, I'm going to go a little bit more aggressive here because I want to spend less time air braking if at all possible. The things that were overheating were, well, supposed to overheat or have been fixed, in theory, at this point. So, let's start up this engine, and I'm going to put this down at 80 kilometers this time. And then our periapsis burn is also going to be at 80 kilometers. It's going to be a fairly small burn, only about 14 meters per second. I want to put us in surface mode, and I want to put us in sea level altitude. So that'll all be absolutely fine here. We're getting this down to 100 kilometers. Cool. 20 kilometers to go. Magnificent. So our deorbit engine definitely does the trick. No doubt about that. I'm fairly content with our deorbit engine. Going from about 110 kilometers to aero capture is very, very doable with this engine. So that seems fine. We're going to have to work on the delivery system here, but that's not going to be anywhere near as complicated. So we're at 88 kilometers now. 87. 86. 85. 84. 83. 82. 81. And engine shutdown. We'll call this good enough. We've got 13 meters per second left. I want to burn that at about 80 kilometers. So that'll be absolutely fine. We are, at this point, ready to warp forward and enter the atmosphere. But it's going to take us a little bit to get to 80 kilometers, and we are very likely not going to have anything interesting happen between now and then. So I will be back once we're at 80 kilometers. See you guys in just a moment. Okay, so here we are with the heat beginning to build up. We're at almost 80 kilometers. I decided I'm not actually going to do this burn at 80 kilometers. I'm going to do this burn the moment we see the first heat gauge, which I think is a little closer to like 78 or something like that. We're going to continue on 4x time warp until we get there. So we're going to have a wee bit of a slideshow here, but that is normal for KSP2. That's not anything unusual. So that is fine for the moment. Now, we should have some extra drag going on from what we had before from those ablative heat shields. I'm wondering how much ablation has actually already been utilized. We could check that by going in here and checking in on, like, this guy. It has actually used 0 ablation thus far. Remarkably. Okay. Well, that is fine. If it hasn't used any ablation, I guess that's okay. Those heat shields are pretty heavy, and it might start using ablation once we push through some of this outer shell. That might be the way that that ends up working. So for now, we're at about 79.7 kilometers. We have dropped below 80. I would normally have done our braking burn at this point. You can see our apoapsis is naturally within the atmosphere, so we are not coming back, and our time to periapsis is going up. So we're not going to come back up at all. This is without any sort of push from our engine. This is just from dropping down to 80 kilometers. In fact, we've dropped another 10 kilometers from just natural drag. That is absolutely fine. You can see here that our surface velocity is going down, and it's going down at a fairly decent speed, actually. I'm pretty happy about that. That's pretty good. Once again, though, I'm going to start up this burn the moment we see a heat gauge. So I'm expecting that any time now. The heat gauges usually pop up somewhere in the 78th kilometer here. So let's let that happen. It's going to be 77, 78, somewhere around there. Very soon, we should see our first heat gauge, at which point we are going to drop out of physics warp, and we're going to burn off these 13 meters per second. Now, that's not going to do a huge amount in terms of reducing our overall velocity. Okay, there's a heat gauge, dropping down to 1x warp, and commencing the burn. That's not going to do a huge amount for us in terms of reducing our velocity and preventing this heat. But this is approximately the best time we can do this. It's interesting that the heat shields are overheating before the engine is. I feel like that's an oversight on the part of the KSP2 devs, to be honest with you. This engine should be destroyed long before these heat shields should be. So that's definitely a thing. Okay, so we are out of fuel. Let's jettison that engine. We do not need to carry that weight with us anymore. So away that goes, and our drag should separate us from that engine reasonably well. We're moving at 3157.2 meters per second, and that will hopefully take a little bit of the heat pressure off of these shields. It won't take much of it, but hopefully a little. Let's check to see where we're at for the horizon here. Yeah, the sun is going to be coming up here very, very soon. So that seems absolutely fine. The real question, of course, is, as it has been, is this sufficient heat shield protection and drag to slow us down to a point where we're no longer losing heat shields? That is question 1. Question 2, terminal velocity. That's more of a statement, but what is the terminal velocity? Question 3, are 8 parachutes enough to bring this to the ground? I'd be a little surprised if 8 parachutes were enough, but this is Eve, and I don't really have a way to judge that. So we'll just have to test it. 8 parachutes might be enough on Eve. With the drag of all of these heat shields, we'll see. We're currently cruising at 3153.7, and we are decreasing at approximately 0.1 per second, but this is going to take a bit. I want to check in on this heat shield. Have we started ablating? We have. Okay. So we are definitely ablating off some heat shield here. So that is, of course, dropping our mass. So as we ablate off these heat shields, that does also mean that we're getting drag from these heat shields, by the way. So as we ablate off these heat shields, that will reduce our overall mass, making it easier for us to slow this down. It's not going to be easy at any time. This is a very, 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 very heavy payload. This is not surprising. But these inflatable heat shields, they've got some mass to them too, and as they burn off, that will reduce the overall amount of force required to slow us down. So that'll be good. But we'll keep an eye on the ablation of these heat shields, and I'd like to kind of keep this guy open. I'm going to, I think, put it like off over here for now. And I want to see what that ablation ends up looking like, how much of that gets used. Keep in mind, we're mostly using those heat shields to protect these joints and hopefully make sure that these joints don't overheat on the way down this time, because that is what caused our catastrophic failure last time, not the loss of heat shields. We're currently seeing some overheats only in this outer shell at this moment. Yes, these are further back. That is expected. So the outer shell here is definitely seeing a bit of overheat happening. This is 1000% expected. We should be seeing the sun coming up reasonably soon over here, and that'll light things up a bit for us. In fact, it'll get a little too bright, perhaps. But checking in here, we can see, yeah, we've already lost a 1/4 ton of ablation in this heat shield. And let's see. This is intended to bring us home. This heat shield should not lose any ablation, but actually it is. Remarkable. But that shouldn't be that big of a deal. Okay. That is actually quite remarkable that this heat shield here is seeing ablation. Huh. I definitely would not have expected that. But it should be okay. We should have enough spare ablation. It doesn't take that much ablation to actually slow us down in Kerbin's atmosphere, especially with how light this payload will be by the time we get there. So that's not that big of a concern. We will start losing some of our outer shell here, and this is happening a little bit sooner than it was previously. Previously, we were in daytime before we started losing the outer shell. This is because we're being more aggressive with our entry to make this go a little bit faster. So this is fully expected. We're just at this lower altitude a little bit earlier. We're spending less time in the upper atmosphere and more time in the slightly less upper atmosphere. We may have to adjust that back up from 80 kilometers to 85 or 88 or something along there, but honestly, I think this design is probably going to do the trick. The question is this approach vector going to do the trick? And I'm guessing the answer to that to be yes. So you can see here we are slowing down at a pretty decent rate at this point. About 0.2 per second or so, I'd say. Actually, it's about 0.1 per second. Slightly over, perhaps. But that's not bad. Not bad at all. We haven't had any of our heat shields burn off just yet, but they will very, very, very soon. So that seems fine. Our surface velocity is going down, but we need to drop another roughly 4 kilometers for that to really end up being, like, dramatic reductions. There goes the first 2 heat shields. Not surprising. The next 2 are going to go. There goes 1, and this one should follow shortly thereafter. Yep, there it goes. Cool. So the outer shell of heat shields is beginning to fail, but we've got plenty of heat shield left here. Absolutely ludicrous amounts of remaining heat shield. So this should be absolutely fine. We are seeing an overheat on this center one. This is, of course, outer shell. That was previously being shielded by the engine, which for some reason, the engine apparently has higher heat tolerance. I don't have an explanation for that. Or more likely, it creates less drag, and so it collects less heat. That's probably what's going on there. But even so, the engine should not be outlasting these heat shields. Okay, so these 2 heat shields here are going to be going away fairly soon. This is all absolutely fine for right now. These heat shields failing are completely expected, and in fact, that's part of the design of this craft at this point. We're currently at about 73 kilometers. This is looking good. Our periapsis is 14 kilometers, and that is going to be dropping negative very, very soon. We just need to bring this down to probably, like, I think we're going to start seeing fairly safe heat levels at somewhere around 2,500 meters per second, something like that. So more outer shells are failing here. This isn't surprising. We've got plenty more heat shield to go here. Cool. I want to check in on our ablation status here. Okay, we've ablated off almost 1 full ton of heat shield from these internal heat shields here. That's fine. That means that they're doing their job, and they are protecting the struts behind them. That's exactly what we want them to be doing right now. So that sounds good. We're about to lose this heat shield, which is a good thing, ultimately. And currently, we are going to have to hold attitude a little bit harder in the pitch direction. So that is absolutely what we see going on right here. And that's because we lost our bottom heat shields before we lost our top heat shields. But we don't seem to have an attitude issue when we lose heat shields in basically any random order. So that is great. We seem to lose them from bottom to top pretty regularly. And indeed, we're about to lose a couple more heat shields here. That is understood. We have slowed down a decent amount. Look at how this speed... Okay, not right now while the heat shields are breaking. But once we get back to a reasonable frame rate, look at what these... or look at the speed decrease. That is definitely getting a lot faster. So that's looking great. We're losing 2 additional heat shields here. That is completely expected. And we just need to lose these 3 outer shell heat shields here, and then we've got 1 additional in the center, which of course was protected by the engine for a while there. So that's looking great. I'm not so far seeing any overheats of these guys out here. They're so far pretty much all protected by their respective heat shields. So that is looking great. We are seeing some significant ablation, but that is absolutely expected. Our periapsis is now negative. And we're going to lose these 3 outer shell heat shields very shortly. We're still cruising at like 3,100 meters per second here. That is going to continue to drop. But I have a sneaking suspicion that this is going to be either a complete success or very close to it. That is the current theory. I believe we are nearly done with this iteration phase. And that's good, because this has gone on for a while, no doubt about it. But this sort of a landing and takeoff on Eve is always extremely complicated. So, here we are. So we've only got 1 outer shell heat shield left. None of the 4th shell heat shields here, or I guess we could call it either the 2nd or the 4th shell. I'm going to call it the 2nd shell. None of the 2nd shell heat shields here actually have a heat gauge as of right now. So that means that they're going to last for a while, but as we dip deeper into the atmosphere, we're going to be building up a lot of heat. We're going to be essentially trading our surface velocity here for heat buildup. And that's what we've got going on here. That's why these are overheating. So that looks absolutely fine for now. We are about to drop down below 3,100 meters per second, and that is good. That means we've dropped so far in this aerobrake about 80 meters per second. And you might say, that is not very much. And you're kind of right, but you're also kind of not. Because keep in mind, we're falling towards the periapsis, so it's actually more than that. We would be... drag notwithstanding, we would be accelerating at a very rapid pace right now. So we're counteracting that entire acceleration, and we're dropping the speed by a reasonable amount. So that is a very good sign. We're about to lose this center heat shield right here, and that's expected. That is our final outer shell heat shield. We are not seeing any heat gauges back here this time. So our heat shields on the inside here appear to be doing their job. That's very good. We're down below 3,100 meters per second. Okay. Center heat shield is going to be lost any moment now. There it goes. That's absolutely fine. Apparently... Okay, I think that just clipped through us and flew on through. Sure. Whatever, that's fine. So we're starting to see our 2nd shell of heat shields heating up here. They're bearing the brunt of a lot of heat right now. Keep in mind, this is a crazy amount of energy that is currently being used to slow this down. Like, just think about how heavy this vehicle is. And you start to realize the amount of, like, the magnitude of force that you need to slow this down. It's an insane amount of force. We're not seeing any issues with these struts. So, as I said, these internal heat shields appear to be doing their job. That is very, very good. The ablation means that this is losing its... like, bits of the shield are flaking off and carrying the heat with them. That's how ablative heat shields work. These inflatable ones are not ablative, and we are kind of emulating ablative heat shields by having rows of them. So that is fine for now. I want to check in on how this heat shield is doing. Interesting that the HS375 and 500 have the exact same amount of ablation. Huh. I don't know what to make about that one. I think we're losing a heat shield here. Yeah, we definitely lost a heat shield there. The sun is up and it is very bright, and more heat shields are falling, causing us issues with our frame rate, of course. But if we look at our speed, it is currently down to about 3,068 meters per second. We are starting to lose the second level heat shields, and we're starting to go into the third level of heat shield. So that's looking good. Our current altitude is at about 64.5 kilometers. So we're starting to get into some very thick portions of the atmosphere. Keep in mind, Eve's atmosphere is crazy thick. It is just insane how much there is in Eve's atmosphere. The atmospheric pressure this high up is probably broadly similar to sea level on Kerbal. I don't know that for a fact, but I would guess it's something fairly similar to that. So that looks good for now. I'm happy with how our... hang on, what is back here? This one has an overheat on it. Okay, that's interesting. This is far later. This heat shield is intended to protect this. Okay, now this one does as well. That's noted. But also note how quickly we are decelerating at this point. Our deceleration is getting a lot faster. So we'll see if these are able to survive. This is happening behind well, actually, this is kind of happening behind like 5 levels of heat shield, that we're still seeing an overheat on these struts. However, we're not currently seeing an overheat on some of the others. So that is absolutely noted. We are, I believe, losing another heat shield now. Yes, that is accurate. And we'll see if we need to toss in more levels of heat shield. The other thing that we could do is have this be a longer aerobrake. We went fairly aggressive with this. And if we have to, we could tone that down. I would definitely prefer not to. But if we have to, we could. This is definitely performing better than what we saw previously. This is a marked improvement, for sure. We are currently seeing some of that still 4th level heat shields failing at this point. So we still have 3 levels of heat shield in all of these locations. That is looking pretty good. What I'm most concerned about right now is these 2 struts. That is the biggest concern at this moment. But those heat gauges appear to be holding fairly steady. Now, we are about to drop below 3 kilometers per second. This is huge. So our deceleration is accelerating, which we would expect. That does, of course, mean as we go down, we're having less and less energy that is getting changed into heat because we have less potential energy to exchange. However, the atmosphere is also getting thicker, which means that there's more resistance. So currently it's probably mostly balancing each other out, but we are slowing down quite quickly at this point. We're slowing down at this point by about 1 meter per second per second. That is huge. The question is, will we hold? And I think we will at this point. The major question now, the only question really that I have at this moment is, do these 2 struts hold? And this one is definitely running hotter than this one. So that's noted. But our deceleration is significant. However, we're losing attitude. Ooh, we are definitely losing attitude. Oh, we're so close here. Can we not? Oh, man. That's not great. See, this is not how aerodynamics works. Not in the slightest, but whatever. Okay, KSP. I don't know why it wants to do this. This is probably due to mass distribution. But we just override our amount there. We were so close. We got this so close. Unfortunately, that attitude loss is the problem. Our speed there was down to, when we lost attitude, it was down to about 2,900 meters per second and going down fast. We were incredibly close to getting that done. And we can see the vehicle is still surviving reasonably well, even with the attitude loss. So that is definitely a very encouraging sign. I was really thinking that that would do it, but the attitude loss, that just makes it a little bit rough. So, what do we want to do about it? Well, there's only one thing to do, and that is we add a few additional reaction wheels. I really don't like that answer, but that's the answer that we've got. A loss of attitude there is, of course, catastrophic. We were incredibly close at that point. Incredibly close. So what I'm going to do then is I'm just going to pop off these guys. I'm going to double our reaction wheels. We're going to take this up to 4, and we put this back on. Do we have to redo our action group? Probably not. Apparently, this only has the 1 reaction wheel. Can I please get in here? Thank you. We're going to pop this off. We're going to put 1 there, and then we're going to double it again. There we go. 4 reaction wheels. We're going to pop this off, double that. There we go. And same thing here. Perfect. Okay, we're going to need to do it here, as well as a few other locations, of course. This is a lot of reaction wheels. This is some extra mass, but the larger concern here isn't actually mass. The larger concern is battery charge. Doubling our reaction wheels will give us a lot more attitude control, and it will mean that we are likely not going to lose attitude, at least at that point. We might lose attitude later on as stresses continue. Okay, we'll do that, and we'll put this in here. And as far as those action groups go, they are going to be a little tedious to get set up. It's unfortunate. I'm very sad that that did not work. It was so close. I'm going to duplicate these guys and put them here. I'm going to duplicate these guys and put them here. Now, we still need a couple more of these. This is only 2 here. This should be at 4 reaction wheels. And I'm going to have to duplicate it like this. Okay. There we go. Now we grab this, reattach that, and we'll need to get rid of this. Move these guys on out. There we go. Reattach that. And then there are, I think, a couple more to do down here. This is so close, but that attitude loss is just catastrophic. We cannot afford to lose attitude at that point. That will just not work. So we got to put these in here, and of course we could get another shell. I don't think that's our problem, though. I don't think we need more heat shield shells. The major question at this point is coverage of these, and I think that probably happened because I moved the position of this. So I want to be in this mode here, if I can. Okay, come on, garbage collection. Let me move. Thank you. I want to grab this guy, and I want to recenter this back to here. I think we probably just didn't have the coverage out over here. I just wanted it to look more centered here, but that isn't what we actually need. So that should fix that problem, the overheat on these areas. That should also fix, hopefully, the attitude control. The question now is what is the action group looking like? We need to hop in here, and there should be a grand total of, I believe it was 80 actions in... Let's see. Where's the custom one? There are 80 actions here. Okay. I'm just going to run a quick test. I'm going to launch this, and we're going to put this out over Eve. I'm not going to go through a full test here. I'm going to do that probably at least... Well, I'll put it this way. The next test will be successful. I can 100% guarantee that, because if the next test doesn't work, we can just not upload it and make the necessary alterations. I think this one will work. But what I want to do right now is I want to just put this out over Eve and make sure that our action group is working. That's all I'm interested in right now. So let's unpause this. Okay. Eventually, the game will get caught up. Okay. There we go. It's mostly caught up. Okay, let's check the action group. This looks correct. Yeah, I'm like 95% certain that this is correct. The game definitely needs a restart, and that is what I'm going to do. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Atala, Ali Lee, Dark Horse, Xenocyte, Upper Cumberland Gamers, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, The Lounge STL, Kentogan, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time, when this is going to work.